Before you start, how are my clocks today? They feel even louder.
Your what?
My clocks.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Let me try something. Give me 1 second. No, that doesn't work.
What are we trying to do?
I literally just I put a blank over it.
Stop time.
How's it a bird call?
We're definitely using that. Hello and welcome to Hazard to Birds, a brand new podcast hosted by myself, Tom McAdam, and the incredible Kieren Stevens.
Hello, that's me. So the plan going forward for this podcast is to invite a range of guests from all over the pop culture world to discuss current projects and talk about pop culture news, comics, games, movies, and all the good stuff like that.
Yeah, so we're going to be breaking down the show into various sections. For example, we really want to showcase other indie comic producers and other Kickstarter projects that we think are good and people that we've maybe spoken to that we know are passionate about their projects, and we're going to try and push them through as well. So that's going to be something that we're going to cover in each episode.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is definitely something we feel really strongly about. There's a lot of great comic books and other creative projects out there, and we'd love to be able to help them out by sharing some of our favourites and why we love them so much.
Yeah, but as this is our first episode, and considering we have our own Kickstarter currently running, in this episode we'd like to just introduce ourselves really and our company, Broadcast Comics, and then we'd like to talk a little bit about our first book, which is Diamond Issue 1.
Yeah, can't wait to talk about that in a bit. So thank you so much for joining us for episode 1. We hope to be doing an episode like this once a month, or maybe even more depending on how things go. But like Tom said, this week we'll be focusing on the Kickstarter and going into some more detail about the story and the world as Diamond as a whole.
Okay, so we'd normally be getting a guest on the show, but as today we are technically the guests ourselves, I suppose more specifically Kieren should be the guest, seeing as he was the writer and the creator of Diamond.
God, what have I got myself in for here? Going forward, we're obviously looking forward to getting a lot more guests in. We've already got the artist on Diamond Issue 1, Domenico Pagano, lined up, and we're really looking forward to talking to him about his involvement on the project.
Okay, so generally I think the way it's going to work is we're going to start out by letting the guest just introduce themselves and talk about what they do a little bit, and then we're going to prepare some questions for them. So in this episode, obviously it's a little bit different, of course, because we've got Kieren as the guest. So why don't we start out, Kieren, by you telling everybody who you are and what you do, and then I can ask you some questions, which I promise he has not seen up until this point.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit nervous about that one. So comic books have been part of my life for as long as I can remember, but maybe not so much in the comic format. I remember growing up watching the cartoons on repeat. Watching the weekly adventures of Spider-Man was, one of the best parts of the week. But it wasn't until quite a bit later that I actually got my first comic, and I've still got it on my shelf to this day. A lovely hardback edition of Civil War, which I got for about £7 on Amazon. But I think these days I know that it's time to support our local comic shops.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm a UK-based comic writer. My first writing credits were on Mad Robot Comics, Cadaver's World Gone to Hell, alongside a whole range of super talented creators. But Diamond Issue 1 will mark my first venture into the world of independent comics in a feature-length book.
Okay, so before you go any further, because you're going to spoil all the questions that I've prepared for you, I think we should start with the question that we're probably going to start with on every guest who comes on the show, and that is a would you rather question. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the first question I want to ask you is, would you rather have spaghetti for hair or mayonnaise for sweat?
I hate mayonnaise, so I'm going for spaghetti for hair.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guessing, what does it grow like hair normally would?
I think so.
Renewable food source. I love a bit of spaghetti. Let's do that.
Yeah, you could live off that for a while until you
Absolutely.
go bald in your mid-20s.
Ouch. At least I've still got my mid-20s to come.
Yeah, ouch. Okay, so let's move on to some more serious questions. So we already talked about you and the fact that you've written Diamond issue 1. So I don't think we've talked about where we are on Kickstarter. So we're currently, I think at the time of recording, 78% funded. I think could be 77.
Yeah, we're very close now.
Yeah, almost across that finish line. So why don't you start off by telling us a bit about the book and Diamond as a character?
So on the Kickstarter, we say that Grayson Matthews was a screw-up, a rock star who believed his own hype and made nothing but selfish and harmful decisions. In the wake of a tragedy, his reckless streak is combined with superpowers that make him immune to harm and extremely dangerous to others. And I absolutely adore that tagline because I really think it encompasses a lot of what issue 1 is. We find out who Grayson Matthews is, how he got his powers, and how he'll be using them going forwards.
Yeah, it really gives a good sense of the first issue and him as a character as well. It's a good tagline.
Absolutely. So in issue 1, we're introduced to Grayson's life as a rock star. We see that it's all about the flashy guitars, the crowd surfing, and the big parties. And what happens when you let fame and fortune go to your head?
So Grayson's he's a famous rock star. He's partying all the time. He's mega famous, doing a load of drugs, drinking a lot, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and it's actually at one of these parties that he's given a choice, and unfortunately he makes the wrong decision.
Okay. So where did the actual character come from originally? Where did the idea come from? The spark of inspiration, so to speak.
Yeah, so weirdly enough, he was one of the first characters I started creating, but he was very different back then. So the original inspiration was really based around his powers, the energy shields that he can generate. And I wanted to explore how that could work in sports.
Interesting.
So Grayson was actually originally going to be a rugby player called Scrum.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I very quickly realised I have no idea about any of the rules or history of rugby, and probably not the way I should be going.
Well, this is obviously before we were speaking about it, because I used to play rugby a lot, and I probably
Oh really?
Yeah, maybe we would have gone a different way if that had come up earlier on.
How interesting is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this would have been back in 2017 actually when I started writing. But I really wanted to explore, the history of performance enhancing drugs in sport, and I thought it would be such an interesting way for a good, morally good rugby player to maybe experiment with this, and it causes this massive change in him that really would have cast a different light on the character.
Wow, interesting. I'm learning that myself for the first time right now. So.
Yeah, so you can see that the character was very different from what he is today, but there are also a lot of elements that are still there.
It's a similar character progression in some ways.
Absolutely. So I think the story that I really wanted to tell was, how do you react when you're given a decision that will really shape your future?
Okay.
And if you make the wrong choice, how do you deal with that? And how do you seek your redemption?
Interesting. Amazing. Okay, so we talked about Diamond as a character, but what about the world in which he exists in? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Diamond will be the first book in our new superhuman universe. It's a slightly fantasized, superhero-heavy version of the real world. Specifically, Diamond's actually based in Camden, London.
Okay, so it's UK based, which is quite unusual, I think, in itself, or quite unique in itself.
UK superheroes, they definitely had a huge appeal a few years ago, but they seem to have dropped off the radar lately.
So do the public know that superheroes exist? Is it a bit like the newer Marvel universe where people are kind of aware of them, or is it kind of a hidden?
So superheroes definitely exist in the world and the public are aware of them. But as we explore more of the lore of the world, I think we'll delve into a bit of their role and some of the more famous superhumans.
So you mean like kind of higher positions in society?
Yeah, so we'll be exploring some of these sort of characters in Diamond and some of the books that hopefully will follow it very soon. We'll see, superhuman versions of celebrities like actors, musicians, but we'll also see them in high ranking positions such as, the police force, the Queen's Guard, things like that.
Awesome. So it's not just. I think it's quite an important point to get across. Is it's not the world that you've created is not just about Diamond. Although to start with, we are focusing on Diamond as a series of books, but it's going to be expanded. There's going to be other characters that exist and maybe cross over into his stories going forward.
Absolutely, I see Diamond as somewhat of a catalyst. It's going to be the first point in a changing world. Much like our own, things happen every day in this world that have huge effects. But I think Diamond Issue 1 will mark a growth in the superhuman community and also in the public perception of superhumans.
Okay, so that covers a little bit more about Diamond, so people are going to know, before. I guess people that are looking to pledge on a Kickstarter for a comic they've never read or a series that they've never read before, then this is it's going to give them a little bit more incentive to dive into the story. So why don't you talk a little bit more about why you started writing and what some of your main influences are?
Yeah, so writing was something that was a bit of an impulsive decision for me, actually. I was a big comic fan long before I even thought about trying to write myself. I've always been a huge Marvel fan, and yeah, from the cartoons to the video games, and then the cinematic universe launched when I was quite young, and I remember that being a pivotal point of my life and deciding what I wanted to do.
So a follow-up question would be, who's your favorite Marvel character?
God, it's like asking a parent to choose between their kids. That
Yeah, I know.
um, yeah. So my favorite Marvel character. I often overthink this one, but my answer always comes back to the same. I'd probably have to say Spider-Man. His comics are some of the funniest, most action-packed, dynamic, and heart-wrenching stories that I think I've ever read.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know if he's my favorite, but we'll leave that for another episode. Because I don't have to make a list of lists, I think.
I think that's the problem. Obviously, characters are really determined by their creative teams. So a character staying consistent is hard, but I think he probably is one of the most consistently solid superheroes there is. There's something about Spider-Man's stories and his rogues gallery that it just makes me feel like a kid again. It makes me fanboy whenever I'm reading a Spider-Man comic. When you see those trickling grains of sand from Sandman, or you see Rhino charging in, I feel like I remember being sat on the sofa playing, Marvel Ultimate Alliance and things like that, and it just brings back so many positive memories. Yeah. I think he'll always be in the upper echelons of superheroes for me.
Okay, interesting. All right, so we've covered Diamond and you a little bit. So why don't we talk about Kickstarter in general and why? I mean, I guess this could be directed to me as well, but why Kickstarter? Why did you decide that Kickstarter was the way forward for Diamond Issue 1?
Yeah, so it's a funny story actually. So when I decided I wanted to try writing in 2017, I say that more of as a hobbyist than thinking I'd ever get anywhere with it. So I started making my own characters and stories, and even stories based on real life characters. And it wasn't actually until a friend of mine got in contact with the writer Matt Hardy from Mad Robot Comics, and he set up a meeting with the two of us. And that's when I was really introduced to the world of independent comics and Kickstarter.
Little shout out to Matt there from Mad Robot Comics.
Absolutely, it's always a pleasure to see Matt down at Comic Games and Coffee in Chichester.
Is that a double shout out? Okay, so from that meeting, what happened?
Yeah, so I remember talking to Matt about some of my ideas, and he was so supportive of the whole venture that it seemed like something possible, like something there. And we had a lot of sessions where he told me, where I'd bring him scripts, and he'd very kindly make suggestions or edits for me. And that was definitely one of the I think by this point, Diamond had become Diamond rather than Scrum, but
Okay.
it really shaped the way the story went. And actually, I remember when I first started getting art in from Domenico Pagano. Shout out.
Another shout out. We're dropping names.
When I first started getting art in, I remember walking in, and Matt turned to a guy who was sitting there reading his comics, and showed him the art. And I was a bit confused at first, and then he went, "Do you know who this is?" And I was like, "No." He went, "It's Simon Burks from Blue Fox Comics."
Wow.
And it just felt so weird that I decided that I wanted to become a writer, but didn't know anything about it. And now suddenly I've got a page of art, and I'm sat with two people living that dream.
Yeah, and
And
I think it's important to say that, because the question was more around Kickstarter and why you decided to go that way, but Matt Hardy is an absolute Kickstarter god. Like every project he puts up on Kickstarter seems to just smash the goal.
yeah, so that's where I was going with this actually. So I was gonna say, I began talking to Matt through this, but I remember when obviously it wasn't his first Kickstarter at the time, but the first time I'd heard of it, I remember the excitement that came from talking to Matt while he was launching his own projects. You know, the likes of Cadavers or Murder Most Mundane, and it just felt something that could be a reality, and the excitement was getting to me even then. So you can imagine how I'm feeling now. We actually have a book live on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I mean it's a funny one because when you start some kind of creative pursuit, I guess a lot of people start off with the dream that they're going to be mega successful, but it's probably 1% of the people that actually make it over that line. And I think Kickstarter is a great way for anybody to kind of get their foot in the door and get some money behind them, get a crowd or a following behind them. I think it's a really amazing resource for that, especially for comic books.
Kickstarter's definitely not just for comic books. Like they do all sorts of products, but seeing the little market that they've carved out in comics, you can see that it's just perfect for it. The idea of this system where people show that they're interested in this book, rather than just trying to, fund a book, print a book, and then see if anyone wants it at that point.
Yeah, because I mean, aside from the actual funding to produce the book, how many? I mean, if you just self-published a book tomorrow and went and put it in a shop, how many people would buy it? Because I mean, it's hard to sell anything that people don't know about, right?
That's the thing. If you've not got Marvel or DC on your cover, it's an uphill battle.
And that's the whole. It goes back to the whole point about being an indie publisher and how difficult it is to get that following. And I think Kickstarter really helps with that.
I think it definitely raises the question of what is an indie publisher, because some people list it as anything below, that level of Marvel or DC.
Mm.
They'd say that Image or Valiant or Boom Studios are indie producers, but
Wow.
they've got a lot of business behind them. So it's almost like we're in another step of indie below.
Yeah. Indie. Let's coin a phrase.
Sub
Indie.
indie.
Sub indie. Yeah, I like that. Let's go for that.
We've definitely got the garage grimy comic books scene going on.
I mean, yeah, when I was a kid, people used to draw their own books and then photocopy them and just pass them around in school. I mean, I guess it doesn't get more indie than that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about that, and I mean, it would have looked far better than the comics I already started creating when I tried to draw them myself. So I can tell you that is not my strong suit.
I think we should just get that out of the way and say that right now that neither of us are any good at drawing.
No, but if you want to make a big donation to our Kickstarter, we'll do a custom cover just for you.
Yeah, I don't mind drawing something.
I'm sure we can make something great.
Just for laughs. Yeah, I don't mind. Okay, so Kickstarter's great. We know that. So what can people gain from pledging on a project that they might not know much about?
Yeah, I see Kickstarter like being there on the ground floor of this new product. You're not just picking up a book on a shelf. You are investing in the creators, in the story, in the art, in everything. You are the biggest reason for a book's success.
Yeah, it's kind of like the the early access system they have on Steam. I don't know if you use Steam. You're not a PC gamer, then you might not know what it is, but it's kind of like it lets new developers release a game before it's actually finished, and people can, the community really helps out with like the bug fixing, and they're really involved from day one.
Yeah, so maybe that's how we see Kickstarter. It's kind of like that beta launch.
Yeah.
Um, and I think one of the best things about Kickstarter is you say how much you'd like to raise, but that there isn't much risk for the person pledging. Like if the target isn't met, then they don't lose any money.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important thing because a lot of people ask me that when they're talking about the project. They say, if I pay this money now and it's not, you don't reach the goal, do I lose my money and things like that? And it's important for people to know that if we don't get 100% funded, everybody gets their money back, or I think it doesn't even get taken from their account.
No, so the money's not even taken until the Kickstarter is successful.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it really is a great way to show, independent creators support without having any risk. You're not giving them money and then not getting anything in return.
Right.
As soon as we reach that goal, we're in a lucky position to be ready to go. So all of the art is completed, it's coloured. I'll let you in our little inside secret, but today we got the final few pages of lettering through.
Yeah.
So this book is now ready for print. As soon as we hit that 100%, we'll be sending it off to print and getting these rewards ready for everyone.
I guess that's another thing we can mention is that a lot of the Kickstarters I see, there's a huge wait between the date that they get funded and the date that they are going to deliver the product. Whereas because we're ready to go to print almost immediately, the turnaround is going to be quite quick for people. They're actually going to receive the book in quite a short space of time, considering.
Yeah, it was certainly something we wanted to make sure. I've heard a lot of Kickstarter horror stories of things being backed and then not arriving for years, if ever.
Yeah, me too.
And I want to make sure Broadcast is known for delivering on time when we say we will.
Yeah, I mean, we've been realistic. We've given ourselves a bit of a buffer in case, there obviously the state of the world at the moment, there might be some delays. We don't know how busy the printers are, for example, but in terms of what we can do, we're going to do everything we can to make it happen as quick as possible for people. Okay, so we talked about what Kickstarter is and why it's a good thing for indie producers or indie comic creators. So maybe we should move on to some of the amazing rewards that we've set up for our backers.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite parts of the whole campaign, honestly. Yeah, so, as well as, physical and digital versions of the book, we've got some really cool rewards lined up. We've got 3 amazing prints by artist Domenico Pagano. We've got a really cool t-shirt design with graphics by Mike Pink. At the time of recording, there's still one opportunity left to have your face drawn into the comic book itself.
The Immortalized in Ink pledge, right?
Yeah, it's definitely been one of our most popular pledges. We've had to actually restock it 3 times now. I know Dom's getting furious at me at this point.
Is there any indication as to where in the book or which page they will be drawn into, or is that still open to discussion?
Yeah, so we don't want to reveal the page just yet, but I can tell you the panel that it will be shown in will be a flashback to his rockstar days. And there's actually a scene where Grayson Matthews is crowd surfing, and that's going to be where we're going to put some people into the crowd. We're going to try and put some spotlights on them to really show the characters off.
Nice.
I think it's such a cool way to say thank you for the support to the supporters, because honestly we couldn't do it without them.
No, absolutely.
And shall we talk about our biggest reward? Shall I let you take over for
that? Yeah, let's talk about the Superhuman pledge, which is obviously the most expensive in terms of money. So when Kieren showed me the finalized script for Diamond and some of the artwork that Domenico produced, I was like, okay, I've got to sculpt that character. It's incredible. So I kind of part-time started planning it in my head, and then as more artwork started coming through, I started to get a better idea of who Diamond was as a character. And then I saw one image in particular that Dom did with mannequin's arms coming up through the ground, and there was lots of bandages kind of pulling him down. And I just decided, all right, that's the pose I'm going to go for. And yeah, it kind of came from that. I've been working on it on and off for about 6 months now, I think. But it's going to be a 6-scale solid resin statue. It's going to come painted and assembled, unless you're a hobbyist yourself and you'd like it in parts to assemble and paint yourself. We're totally up for that. It's up to you. But I'm quite happy to paint it for you.
I think one of the most important parts to mention is that this is limited edition.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we're not saying that as, a marketing ploy. These aren't being created for mass production.
No.
There will be 5 statues made, and after that, this won't be a thing anymore.
Yeah, we're not just going to start 3D printing them. They are literally going to be cast in resin by hand, and there's only going to be 5 of them ever made, and they will be numbered and signed by me as well. And I think
so the first 2 have now gone, if I'm right.
If I remember right. Already, so you've only got 3 of those left. If anybody's interested in grabbing one of those.
And I believe we can find work in progress pictures on both your account and the Broadcast Comics Facebook account. Is that right?
Yeah, I uploaded one to the page of where I'm up to with it on our Facebook page and our Instagram, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, it's looking badass, man. Seeing like a 3D representation of the cover of the book is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do still. The base is pretty much unfinished. When you look at it, it's just a blob of clay with some arms sticking out of it. But it is going to be a lot more detailed, a lot more refined.
And to those who pledge at this level, I think it's really important that we say the delivery will not be at the same time as the comics. You will get the comics on the agreed date,
Sure.
but the statue will have to follow it just for practical purposes.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got October down as a delivery, and I'll do my very best to meet that. It gives us a good
and we'll be in contact at every stage of that, just to make sure it arrives with you safely.
Sure.
I'd like to quickly mention the rest of the creative team. I know I've spoken quite a bit about myself today, but the art is done by the amazing Domenico Pagano. He's an artist based over in Peru. He's definitely been one of the biggest supporters of the idea. We've been working together for the past few years now, even before Tom came on board. And he's definitely got a vision of both the world of Diamond and the world as a whole. We've created some characters that we won't see for, maybe months, maybe years, but we definitely have an idea of where we want to go with this brand.
Some of those are on our Instagram, right? If you scroll back a while, you can see some of those earlier designs, character designs.
Absolutely, there are definitely some sneak peeks that you'll never know when they're going to show up or in what book.
Delete them all. Yeah, I mean, he's the first time I saw any of his work, it was just mind blowing. He's an incredible artist, and we're lucky to have him.
Absolutely, and he's definitely an artist I think some of the bigger publishers are going to have their eyes on very soon, because his quality of work is just undeniable, and that's not me saying it because he's attached to a book I'm producing. He's just so talented, and I've seen some of the books he's working on at the moment, and it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, they can't have him though. He's ours. That's it. Like we've
signed
a contract in blood.
Yeah, we need to get the chains around him.
Okay.
And I think it's also worth talking quickly about Robin Jones, our letterer on the book.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, this is going to sound so cheesy, but when I tell you that this book has had so many lives already, it went from my idea being splurged onto a page to seeing Domenico's initial pencils, and then to see them in final color, it was something completely different. And now Robin's involved, and he's done 22 pages of gorgeous lettering. It's just taking a whole nother life now.
Yeah, I mean, he's another incredibly talented member of the team, really. He's got a lot of credit to his name. He's worked on a lot of bigger projects.
Yeah, the guy's worked for Image. He's very well recognized, and we couldn't do it without him.
All right, so I think that sums up the questions I'd lined out for you. So that covers Diamond, and what we've got coming up in terms of that kind of world, but maybe we should talk about broadcast in a wider sense and then some of the other ideas we've got.
Oh, are you hinting towards your new secret project?
Maybe.
Are we talking about the A word?
Maybe.
Go on, say it.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about anime. I don't really know where to start with it. So basically I've been working on this world for a couple of years. If anybody follows my sculpture or character design work on Instagram, then you will see a lot of the characters that are based in this world. And
including one that's already won an award, right?
Yeah, I won a little competition, maybe.
A particular competition. Are we going to give them a shout out?
Yeah, we can give a shout out to the Stan Winston School of Character Arts. Some of the best characters in the world were created in that their studio. So, yeah, it was a nice. I basically won an online sculpture competition, character design competition for a character called Rob Rash Rika and his hover bike called Harley. So, a little bit of a spoiler there maybe as to what's coming up, but it's basically a part sci-fi, part post-apocalyptic world that I've created, full of mutated creatures and clans that roam the wastelands. And we're currently working on the first script for the first comic book for that.
I think it's worth saying that anime doesn't exist in the same universe as Diamond.
Absolutely,
it's a completely own world, and I've seen some of the script you're producing, and it's going to be chaos. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I want it to be very gritty, very visceral. Yeah, and I've also got a board game fleshed out that I'd like to produce through broadcast for that as well. And the sky's the limit, really, with Diamond, the superhuman universe and the anime universe. We've got big ideas for both.
So we have these two parallel universes, running at the same time. Yeah. And while I won't shut down the idea, we have no intention of any crossovers between the two.
No, I mean, they're very unique in their own ways, in different timelines, I guess. But that's not to say that I won't be working within your universe and vice versa.
Absolutely, I've got some plans for the Wasteland, that's for sure.
All right, so thanks very much for tuning in to the first episode of Hazard to Birds. Hopefully you found it interesting, got some insight into who we are and what we're planning to do. If you didn't find it interesting, then we promise to get some more interesting people on in the future. This was more just an introduction to who we are and our Kickstarter and what we're going to be doing in the future. But we really appreciate the support if you tuned in and listened. And if you'd like to make a pledge on our Kickstarter to help us get Diamond Issue 1 funded, you can find the link in the description below. And you can find us on all social media platforms at Broadcast Comics.
From both of us, thank you so much for tuning in. And we hope to see you on the next episode. Hit the outro.
Yeah, we really need to work on that. Maybe if anybody's listening that does little jingles or anything like that, maybe you'd like to help us out with a little intro, outro jingle that we can use for all the future episodes. So yeah, thanks very much for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.